Welcome back. This is the Scaling Secrets podcast. Danielle Putnam is here from The New Flat Rate, and Danielle is the president of The New Flat Rate. She enjoys building and growing her company, coaching, sharing best practices with other small business owners, and dabbling in multi-unit retail properties, rental properties, I should say. And so Danielle is going to be talking to us about all sorts of things, how to scale, how to network, how to go beyond the comfort zone of just your normal circle of people. But she's also all about work-life balance, hiring and retaining talent, scorecards, hiring, and we'll just see where the conversation goes and what gets Danielle excited. So Danielle, glad to be speaking with you.
Robert, hey, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for that introduction. That's really fun. That went all over the place. I like it.
And, but that's how most people are, right? You
Hmm.
go and you see some person who lives down the street and you think they're just a school teacher, but they have hobbies, they have past careers,
You're
they have
right.
friends. Everyone has all these layers and everyone has something interesting to share, especially today on the Scaling Secrets podcast. So what is your current focus and what gets you just energized in the morning and what do you feel like talking about?
Well, every day, I guess right now, I'm building a small portfolio of businesses. And so I'm excited to work and move each of them forward a little bit each day. And at the end of the day, I can be like, yes, I actually worked on this business today and I worked on this business today. That makes me really excited, even just if it's incrementally a little bit at a time. But if I could share for this year, 2024, I really feel like as an entrepreneur, I'm breaking the glass ceiling for myself by being authentic. My whole life, my dad's a contractor, my brothers are contractors, my grandpa, uncles, they're all contractors. My husband is an unlicensed contractor, so I mean, I like that too. But I've always felt like to be in the business world in the home service niche, I needed to know as much as contractors, be a contractor, but not on paper, right? I felt like I had to know everything they were talking about in every conversation, so it's not the fake it till you make it. It was more exhausting at all the trade shows and all my articles and everything, trying to be what I really wasn't. And so this year, I just decided to be so authentic, as in, you know what? I'm not a contractor. I don't know very much about contracting at all, but I'm running a software company that actually serves contractors. And I want to be honest about that because then with the authenticity, we can really grow. So if we're going to talk about scaling, we can't do it under the facade of somebody else.
I like that a lot. And it seems like maybe school is to blame, right? Like school has
Yeah,
us take all these other classes on all these electives and teaches us to be well-rounded. And it's good to take that history class or that PE class and learn that
sure.
sport. But there's a difference between trying something out and taking a class versus if it's really one of your strengths or weaknesses. And it's really, I know that I sometimes have beaten myself up in past years for not being like super good at this or that, right? Like I'm
Hmm.
not a very good handyman or I'm just an okay cook. And so it's easy to beat ourselves up. And as you say, try to be something that we're not, but instead
Hmm.
we be authentic. And so this way you're saying, well, I'm not a contractor. I just create this app that helps contractors. And so I know we don't want to focus on this the entire time, but tell us what this app is about. What makes a difference with it?
It's super awesome. It's a menu pricing app for contractors, home service, air conditioning, electrical price or electrical and plumbing, but it does the pricing for them so they don't have to worry about, hey, how much should I present or charge this customer? It gives a menu of options, 5 different price points for anything diagnosed in the home, so the homeowner can choose the level of service they want. But Robert, it takes all the sales pressure off of the technician. And so as a business owner, when you're trying to get your salesmen, your service providers, your front end linemen to bring in more money to increase their average service ticket, if you're able to put a system or a process or a tool in place that does that automatically, then you can really depend on your business to scale better. And that's what our system does for these contractors. And so as I began to kind of lift off my glass ceiling and be authentic in this, I have been able to get so much closer to the product and interviewing my customers, contractors, members saying, what features do you really want instead of trying to assume what they need, right? What do you really want? What can help you to do better? How do you do all of your daily processes? And it's just been an exciting season for the product because I feel like we've grown leaps and bounds taking that approach of listening. And everybody on here today, Robert, I know we think or we want to hear our customers. But over time, myself, I've been in this business for 13 years now. You listen to your customers, and then you might have a year of maybe you're not on the front lines anymore. You're not answering the phones anymore. You've removed yourself several layers. You have management in place. And so you don't necessarily hear all of the squeaky wheels out there. But getting back in there towards the front line every once in a while to find out and get your pulse back on what your customers really want is important. And it's exciting. I love to be able to deliver the value of what they're asking for.
Amazing. And those are some great ideas to think about. You're saying that number one, as far as your app goes, you have like the menu and the pricing and you make it simple. And I imagine that helps both sides of the equation, right? It helps the vendor because, as you said, it removes the sales pressure, but also from the buyer, it's like they know what they're getting. It's very
Hmm.
clean cut and it's simple. And then you also have this idea of asking your customers what they want, but more specifically, keeping that in mind, even in the maybe not later years, but in the churning along years, the
Hmm.
middle years, where you're not quite the scrappy upstart, and you're, as you said, a few layers and levels removed from speaking with that customer. But it's fun to sometimes jump back in and just see how things have changed, and maybe remind yourself a little bit
Hmm.
about how exciting it was in those early days, and
Yeah.
do what all entrepreneurs need to be doing, which is seeking after problems and solving problems. And so, in this journey that you've had of separating yourself from your weaknesses and delegating and growing and building the app, but then going back and getting some of that customer feedback, has anything been surprising you? Have you had any assumptions about your customers or your business, but then these conversations kind of woke you up, made you see things differently?
Hmm. Anything surprised me? Good question. Uh, you know, it's easy for us all to love our product and to love our company and think our company is the best. It has surprised me that the problem we sought to fix in the beginning and the value we wanted to deliver, it's still true today. So we started our business because we wanted to help contractors to increase their cash flow and grow from a position of strength. And 13 years later, that's still the foundation and it still rings true. It's still what we're doing. But within those 13 years, we have fought the shiny object syndrome just as hard as everybody, right? It's like, oh, let's try this, or oh, let's do that, or maybe contractors really want this, or maybe we should message it this way. But 13 years around, I'm like, wait a minute, what really still works is the original solution to the problem. So the messaging never needed to change. But as business owners, entrepreneurs, it's always like, well, maybe if we position it this way, it'll, hockey stick grow faster or better. But sometimes what you actually solved in the beginning, if you're consistent and you're clear with your message and you're not trying to always change it, the growth can be really good. That surprised me in hindsight.
I love that. Going back to the basics, and again, I'm sensing a theme here, right? Of to strengthen your strengths and focus on those things, and instead of looking outside and throwing out what's working, maybe instead of the shiny object syndrome, go for the dull object syndrome, right? And polish off the grime on
Yeah.
it and make the dull object shiny again.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Polish off the grime by fixing what you know you need to fix. And
Right.
Alex Hermosi, I love listening to Alex Hermosi on YouTube if you ever listen to him. But he's like, if
Oh
you
yeah.
would just fix all the things that you should do in your business, 2 years from now, you're going to have a great business. And isn't that true for all of us? Like we have the dull objects that we just have to, let's just sharpen them, make them a little bit better. And 2 years from now, we're going to be so glad we did.
And what's
Hmm.
great about Alex is he'll it seems like he'll take some ideas and he'll like proactively work at just like simplifying them and shortening them until he just has these sound bites that he can say. So in your industry and with your app and your company, is there anything along those lines that you've really just like had to simplify and work to simplify and shorten and really make it basic and make it basic again and revisit? Is there anything that comes to mind as far as like something that was really complex that you simplified in order to get to that next level?
I have a great example with our product. I don't know if you're looking for just business or product related.
That can work.
Okay, so with our product, we started with something called verbal packaging because, of course, there's Google. So let's say, Robert, somebody comes to your house and you want them to replace a part. and they give you a price for it. So then you just run on Google or Amazon and you look up the price of the part and you're like, oh, I can get it for $7. Why should I pay you $250? So to avoid that, we wrote our product in verbal packaging. We talked about systems instead of parts. And there was a great place for that. And that has been very profitable and lucrative for a lot of contractors. But it's also been our number one objective by contractors. And so, what is the blessing is also the curse. And so, we have fought this uphill battle the whole time that we've been in existence. They need the verbal packaging, but it gets in the way. Their technicians don't like it. And then the contractors, the business owners, they don't want to have to fight with their team. And so they just stop using the system. So it's caused a retention problem. So what was the fix for the industry of let's use verbal packaging also was the retention problem at our company. And so we had to be honest about that. And that was actually painful because there's a little bit of pride in it, right? There's pride of, hey, we built this knowing that this is the right way, and it helps people to make the highest average service ticket dollar that they can. So they're getting more cash flow. Why would they not want to do this? But we had to be honest with the feedback of they don't like the objection from their team. And so last year, we rewrote our entire product. We finally listened and determined to give the people what they wanted if we had it or not. And we didn't have it. We didn't have the simplified version. And so we spent a whole year rewriting our product to simplify it and take out the verbal packaging. By the end of the year, we were able to launch the light version. And of course, there's raving reviews of, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Now, I don't have any pushback from my team. So can't believe we fought ourselves on that for so long, but we really simplified and clarified and realized that, again, give the people what they want, and that helps your business grow. And then who cares? And I say that, and I want to be careful how I say that, but like, who cares how our businesses started if we're so married to our baby from the beginning? But if it's not actually continually making life easier for people, we have to let that go. We have to let the old vision, that piece of it, die, right? And adopt what's going to work for people to provide extreme value in the future.
That's a great measuring stick. Just is your company and your process and your solution, is it making life easier for others? And if there's all this other baggage in the way, then do what you have to, whether that means making little tweaks or throwing out the whole thing
Hmm.
and starting new, but get to that point where you are making it easier for your customers. And you hear this lesson a lot of when you build your company and you get to a certain point, and then you kind of outgrow many things. You might outgrow yourself
Hmm.
running the business. You might outgrow the software or your location, or you might outgrow some of your people. And it can sometimes be painful to make these
Hmm.
pivots to say like, okay, well, it was working and it's working this way less and less. And then we have to like make this kind of drastic change. And so how do you feel about that? Like, how do you overcome the emotionality that we're talking about of it being kind of painful, and you hesitate to throw away this baby that you built in order to get to something better, and it's easy enough to look back later on and say I'm glad that I made that decision, but in the moment it can be really scary, can't it?
It sure can. And it really comes down to the circle and the crowd, the circle that you're hanging out with, whether or not it's an emotional decision or strategic. So, for example, we don't want to change and we don't want to rip off that band-aid. It's difficult. If we elevated our crowd, elevated who's speaking into our life, elevated the advisors, the people that we hang out with, the business meetings we choose to go to, if we elevate and start hanging out with people that are way above us in terms of intellect and even success in terms of like monetary, right? If we start hanging out with crowds that are further along in what we view to be success, then we'll begin to start seeing how they view the picture that we're in. And it's so non emotional. It's like, oh, you haven't fixed that yet? No? Okay, we'll fix that so you can get up here with us. Oh, that's right. It's so easy for us to stay in the mud in our own situations, in our own business. It's almost like you're, having your own little pity party, but you don't even realize it. But elevating, so whether you're getting in a networking group, and so there's of course community networking groups, right? We've all got the chamber and we've got Kiwanis, and we've got all kinds of stuff in our towns and our communities that we can join. But recently, there's Vistage. I've been hanging out with different people from a Vistage group in Atlanta, and the conversations that happen right next to me, I have been able to just pick up key things where they're like, "Oh, well, that company size should be doing XYZ." And I'm like, Oh, well, I should do that. The conversations that you just get to listen to are so different and non-emotional that it really propels you. So I would love to say the importance of elevating your crowd.
That is great. That's a great lesson. And way before the call, you and I said that this is something that we've all heard it and many
Mhm.
people say it, but then not everyone applies it, or maybe they apply it sporadically, or maybe
Mhm.
they went to that one networking meeting 3 years ago, but they might just be attending the same networking groups, the same chamber of commerce meetings. And I think that's a really important lesson for us all to think about, because it requires
Yeah.
constant work to say like, okay, well, I need to be just talking to new groups of people and seeing,
Mhm.
and they might even not be the most comfortable fit for me now, but they might be people that I want to, as you said, get myself to their level in the
Mhm.
coming months or years. That way I can better my best, and I can improve my company and all those other things. And it's amazing how many problems fall away when you do that, right? When you surround yourself with the right
Yeah.
people, and maybe some of the problems that you think are problems aren't really that big of a deal or easily
Mhm.
solved, or as you said, you overhear these conversations and you're saying like, man, I'm worried about X and they're talking about Y. That's what I really should be focusing on. And so
Mhm.
when you have done this, when you've maybe overheard these conversations or rethought what you should be working on just because you're talking to new groups of people, does anything come to mind as far as an example? Have you maybe come across someone who's outside your circle and it really woke you up and said, whoa, I have to be doing this instead? Anything come to mind?
One in particular is in finances, and this applies to so many of us, is I I for years put pressure on my accounting team here thinking that they could do all things, right? A bookkeeper can be the controller can be the CFO. But in these types of groups, surrounding myself with people that have already solved the problems in their business that I might be facing today, right? They understand the positions and the lanes and they view things so much differently that they in particular last quarter were able to really show me where I had some key people in my company working on the wrong functions. And it was so unorganic for those team members of mine that we kept tripping up and having problems. But these outside people taking a look in, they're like, oh, Danielle, that's so easy. Like, you have to have this controller and you have to have this CFO doing these other things. Oh, okay, you're right. And the minute that I made those other key hires, there's so much more peace in our finance team, so much more peace. But I've been trying to fix that for a year, Robert. I mean, just like, oh, I can do this. And from the knowledge that I had of how I viewed accounting teams, right? Well, that's not my specialty. So hanging out with these other people that have already been there and done that, it was such a quick change that okay, now there's all this peace. And then my team is happy and we can grow and we can scale in that department so much easier.
Wonderful. So instead of someone being stuck in the problem with you, find someone that
Mhm.
has solved the problem or knows how to
Yeah.
solve the problem that you're experiencing. Just put them in that position so that way so that way there doesn't have to be all sorts of trial and error figuring things out. They already know how to solve this sort of problem. And so, we kind of circled back at this point to this idea of scaling. And so since this is the Scaling Secrets podcast, I want to make sure that I asked the question I didn't know to ask you, right? So, is there anything about scaling your company that, because you know your company and the multiple companies you're running a lot better than I do, having just met you? So, is there a question about these companies and scaling in particular that you'd wished I'd asked you? And can we just pretend I asked you and you can answer it for me?
Uh, you know, I'd say the question of when you're trying to scale your business, what do you do when you get into a slump? If you'd ask me, what do you do when you get in a slump? And in 2022, I would say that that was a slump year. It was the year that I kept thinking, should I actually keep doing this? It's a struggle. It was exhausting. I was burnt out. You could take a vacation, but then the feeling's still there. So I definitely thought about throwing in the towel in 2022. I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs don't talk about that with other people. We feel like if we keep pushing and keep muscling through, surely we can do it. Of course, it affects us physically, it affects our health. Everybody starts making, I shouldn't say everybody, but so many of us make poor decisions during that time. We start eating the wrong things, drinking the wrong things. We quit going to the gym, we're not sleeping. We're trying to fix these problems and the stress that's plaguing us. And so then we consider actually throwing in the towel. And Napoleon Hill, 3 Feet from Gold. I picked up that book several times that year, and I'm like, I could be so close if I would just keep going. But asking for help and looking outside of my world really made a difference for me. Being honest with business coaches, making sure that I had positive, influential voices, and I was honest with them of, hey, I'm thinking about throwing in the towel. And they would help me come up with creative solutions to view things differently, to try different things in my business or to keep going. But something else, I know this is a long-winded answer, Robert, but
That's
something
okay.
else that helped me along the way through that is envisioning the future without it. So, okay, if I threw in the towel today, what would my future look like? And can I live with that? Would that be okay? And once I was able to admit, yeah, my future would look like this and I would be okay, then I could choose in freedom to stay where I was and continue on and to get to the next level in our business. I knew that I would not necessarily feel like a failure, but I still had the belief that I knew we could make it and we could really have something awesome. And by we, I mean my team, right? It's not just me, it's my leadership team, it's my business partners. And so looking back, I'm really thankful that I didn't throw in the towel because we really were so close. And right now we're in such fun strides. We're actually becoming an EOS company. We're working with an implementer. We tried to self-implement last year and we failed miserably. And so finally we've hired a strategic implementer, a partner to implement with us. And we're really excited about that. And I think that was one of the things that I needed too, the structure of being an EOS company. I just can't wait, but I'm glad I didn't quit.
I'm glad too, and I can tell that you're excited about this, and that's deep and powerful to think about because we all have those down days, or we all have
Hmm.
those slumps where you think, well, is this the end? Is it time to give up? But then we might just be telling ourselves bad stories, stuck on our own
Hmm.
head, talking to the wrong people, not asking for help. And so you're saying that we need to do all these things and talk to the right people and really open up and maybe break down the problem and say, well,
Hmm.
are you tired, frustrated, overwhelmed? Well, why is that? And what's the deeper meaning? And to also kind of do these thought exercises of thinking, like, okay, well, if I did quit, what would that mean? What would it look like? And then you can choose to go ahead and do that. But if you stay, you're staying not just out of momentum or out of the
Yeah.
situation, you're staying because you choose to stay and you choose to continue on. And perhaps it's a sign that you can choose to stay, but then implement a different strategy moving forward because the one that you got, maybe that has gotten to the end of the road, not you and not your company. So this is all
Hmm.
very deep and powerful and fun and interesting to think about. But we also want to send people your way and send people to your social medias and your websites. And so that way they can find out more about you. So who is your ideal type of person? Is someone listening to today's conversation and says, I need to check out Danielle and her company and what she's all about? What's the type of person who would investigate more about you and where should they go to do that?
Thank you. Home service providers, if you have a contracting business or you're a technician in the trades, whether it's heating and air, electrical, plumbing, hey, it could be garage doors and chimney. We do indoor air quality too. But if you're a home service provider, we'd love to help you to make sure you're priced right and you're maximizing every opportunity that you go across in the home residential. So thenewflatrate.com is our website. Shoot me an email. I'd love to connect. Danielle at thenewflatrate.com. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. I just started a new Twitter account last week. I'm getting back onto that. So Danielle
Exciting.
R. Putnam, you can find me over there too. But I'd love to connect. And then business wise, you work with a lot of people that are still they're owner operators. They're still in the truck. So anywhere between 1 to 5 million in revenue is kind of the sweet spot of customers that we help out the most.
Wonderful. So if that sounds like a good fit, check out Danielle Putnam on social media and The New Flat Rate. And we said that email address was Danielle at thenewflatrate.com. And as we're winding up our conversation here, Danielle, it's time to put you on the spot and ask for maybe a quote or lesson that can maybe help us out today. And I know it's scary and putting you on the spot, but what comes to mind when I ask you for any quote or lesson to help us?
Mm. Well, the lesson is don't spend your whole life in the office. Like, go home early, cut your meetings off early, have fun with your family and your loved ones. That's a big lesson that we all need to be reminded is don't go over on your meeting. If you've got an hour-long meeting set, do it 45 minutes, do it less. Start giving yourself the boundary in your meeting times and your work time to be able to go spend time with the ones that you love because life's going by fast and let's enjoy it with the people that we want to be with.
I agree completely. You mentioned some of these past years, and I'm thinking, man, was this year 2 years ago? And it's scary how
Oh.
quickly time flies and how it
Mm,
seems to speed up as we get
mhm.
older and accumulate these experiences. So we need to listen to Danielle's advice, cut the meeting off early, and go and live life because life is short. But don't
Yep.
forget when you're cutting that meeting short and getting in the car to also dial up maybe on your phone, thenewflatrate.com. And you'll be glad you did, especially if you're a home service provider who wants to remove yourself from some of these aspects of your business and be able to have some of these options that Danielle is speaking about. Thenewflatrate.com. We'll see you there. And thank you, Danielle, for a really fun and personal conversation. And it was authentic, which is what you're going for. So I really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, Robert. It's been great.